storm had teeth. Rain slashed sideways across the iron gates of Valanthor, turning the mountain road into rivers of mud and stone. Lightning split the sky, illuminating the two figures huddled against the ancient pillars and the small shape pressed between them. "Please." The younger woman's voice cracked against the howling wind. "We only need shelter for the night." The guard did not move from his post. His torch sputtered and hissed, casting orange light across a face carved from indifference. "The Alpha takes no refugees, no wanderers, no one. We'll die out here. That is not Valanthor's concern." Aelith tightened her grip on her daughter's shoulders, feeling Revna shiver beneath the soaked wool of her cloak. 4 days of running. 4 days of sleeping in ditches and abandoned barns, of jumping at every shadow, of watching the road behind them for the wolves she knew were coming. They had reached the only territory that might protect them. And the gates were closed. "Aelith." Orla's voice was thread-thin, barely audible above the storm. The older woman sagged against the pillar, one hand pressed to her side where the bandage had long since soaked through with blood and rain. "Leave me. Take Revna and—" "I'm not leaving you. I'm slowing you down. I have been since the river." Aelith spun back to the guard, desperation burning through her exhaustion. "The woman with me is wounded. She needs a healer. She needs to find another territory." The guard's hand moved to the blade at his hip. "You have until I count to 10. Then I remove you myself." Revna's small fingers curled into Aelith's dress. "Mama." That single word, so quiet, so frightened, snapped something inside Aelith's chest. She had not fled across 3 territories, had not watched her husband's blood soak into their bedroom floor, and had not carried her daughter through frozen forests and swollen rivers to be turned away by a guard who wouldn't meet her eyes. Aelith straightened to her full height. "I demand to see your Alpha." The guard laughed. "You demand? Tell him Aelith of the Greymore Pack stands at his gate. Tell him I have information about Valdric Sorn that he will want to hear." The name landed like a blade between them. The guard's laughter died, his hand stilled on his weapon. For the first time he truly looked at her, at the mud-caked dress that had once been fine, at the bearing that exhaustion could not fully erase, at the steel in her rain-washed eyes. "Valdric Sorn," he repeated slowly. "The Alpha of the Crestlands. Your enemy, the wolf who has been massing forces on your eastern border for 6 months." Aelith held his gaze without blinking. "I know why. I know what he's planning. And I will die with that knowledge before I share it with a guard who counts at frightened children." Silence stretched between them, filled only by the scream of the wind. Then the guard turned and disappeared through a narrow door set into the stone wall. Aelith's knees nearly buckled. "That was a bluff," Orla whispered. "You don't know what Valdric is planning." "I know enough." Aelith pulled Revna closer, trying to share what little warmth remained in her body. "I know he killed my husband for it. I know he chased us across 3 territories. Whatever Jareth discovered before he died, it was worth more than his life. And if this Alpha doesn't care?" Aelith stared at the iron gates, at the massive wolf heads forged into the metal, their eyes seeming to watch her with cold appraisal. "Then we die here, instead of out there. At least Revna will be out of the rain." Minutes passed. Or hours. Time lost meaning in the cold and the dark. Orla's weight grew heavier against Aelith's shoulder. Revna had stopped shivering. A bad sign, Aelith knew. The body stopped fighting when it began to surrender. Then the gates groaned. Aelith's head snapped up as the massive iron doors swung inward, revealing a courtyard of gray stone and flickering torches. Guards lined the pathway, their faces hard and their hands on their weapons. And at their center stood a man who made the storm seem gentle. He was tall, taller than any wolf she had encountered, with shoulders that blocked the torchlight behind him. His hair was black and fell past his jaw. Wet with rain, he seemed not to notice. A scar ran from his left temple to his cheekbone, pale against skin that had been burnished by wind and war. But it was his eyes that stopped Aelith's breath. They were the color of winter amber. Pale gold, almost yellow, with a coldness that made the storm feel warm. They swept over her with the assessment of a predator evaluating prey, calculating, dismissive, and already bored. "You speak of Valdric Sorn." His voice matched his eyes, low and rough, like stones grinding together. Aelith forced herself to stand straighter despite her trembling legs. "I do. Many speak of him. Few have anything worth hearing." Those amber eyes flicked to Orla's slumped form, to the blood visible through her cloak, then down to Revna. The child looked up at him without fear. Something shifted in the Alpha's expression, a crack in the ice. There and gone so quickly Aelith might have imagined it. "What is your name, little one?" Revna's voice was barely a whisper. "Revna. Revna." He spoke the name like he was tasting it. "And do you know who I am?" "The sad wolf." The courtyard went silent. Guards exchanged glances. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. The Alpha's jaw tightened. "What did you say?" "Your wolf." Revna pointed at his chest, her small finger unwavering. "He's sad. He's been sad for a long time. He misses someone." For a long moment, the Alpha simply stared at her daughter. Something moved behind his eyes, something old and wounded and furious. His hands clenched at his sides. A muscle twitched in his scarred cheek. When he spoke again, his voice was ice. "One night." Aelith nearly collapsed with relief. "Thank you. Do not thank me." He turned away, his cloak snapping in the wind. "You will be housed in the eastern cottage. You will not leave it. You will not speak to my wolves. And at dawn, you will tell me everything you know about Valdric Sorn." He paused at the courtyard's edge without looking back. "If your information is worthless, I will throw you out myself." He vanished into the darkness, but just before he disappeared, Aelith saw his hand move to his chest, to the exact spot where Revna had pointed, and she saw his fingers tremble. The cottage was small, but warm. Aelith had expected a cell, cold stone and iron bars befitting the Alpha's glacial welcome. Instead, they found a dwelling with a fire already crackling in the hearth, a bed piled with wool blankets, and a pot of something that smelled like herbs and honey steaming over the flames. A rear door led to a small garden, and a single window faced the dark forest beyond. Someone had prepared for them. "Help me with Orla." Aelith guided the older woman to the bed, easing her down onto the mattress. In the firelight, Orla's face was the color of old bone. Her lips had taken on a bluish tint that made Aelith's stomach clench with fear. "The bleeding has slowed," Orla murmured, her eyes fluttering. "I'll be fine by morning." "You'll be dead by morning if we don't clean that wound properly." Aelith found clean cloth and water already set beside the hearth. She worked quickly, cutting away the blood-soaked bandage to reveal the gash beneath, a claw mark that ran from Orla's hip to her ribs, inflicted by one of Valdric's wolves during their escape across the river. It should have killed her. Would have killed a lesser woman. "You need a healer," Aelith said quietly. "Healers ask questions. Questions lead to attention. Attention leads to—" "I know." Aelith pressed the cloth against the wound, watching Orla's face contort with pain. "But we're inside Velenthor now. Valdric can't reach us here." "Can't he?" Orla's eyes found hers, clear despite the fever burning through her body. "You saw how that Alpha looked at us. Like we were already dead. How long do you think his hospitality will last once he realizes we've brought war to his doorstep?" Aelith had no answer. Revna had curled up on a small cot near the fire, her thumb in her mouth. A habit she had abandoned 2 years ago and reclaimed in the past week. Her eyes were closed, but Aelith could tell from her breathing that she was not asleep. She never slept anymore. Not truly. She shouldn't have said that. Orla's voice dropped to barely a whisper. About his wolf? About the sadness. She's a child. She doesn't know what she's saying. Doesn't she? Aelith's hand stilled on the bandage. She had noticed it too over the past months. The way Revna seemed to know things she shouldn't. The way animals calmed in her presence. The way she sometimes spoke of people's feelings as if she could see them hanging in the air like colored smoke. Jareth had noticed before her. Had started asking questions. Had begun researching the old bloodlines in texts that should have been dust centuries ago. And then Jareth had died. We don't speak of that, Aelith said firmly. Not here. Not anywhere. Orla's eyes searched her face for a long moment. Then exhaustion won, and she sank back against the pillows, her breathing growing shallow and uneven. Aelith sat by the fire until the flames burned low, listening to the storm rage against the walls and wondering if they had truly found shelter, or merely traded one cage for another. She must have dozed. One moment she was watching the embers glow. The next, pale gray light was seeping through the cottage's window, and Revna's cot was empty. Aelith bolted upright, panic flooding her veins. Revna? No answer. She checked behind the woodpile, under the bed, in every corner of the small room. Nothing. The front door stood slightly ajar, letting in a slice of cold morning air. Aelith was through it before she could think. The storm had passed, leaving the world washed in silver mist and dripping silence. The eastern cottage sat at the edge of a vast forest, its dark trees standing like sentinels against the gray sky. Somewhere in the distance, wolves howled. The dawn patrol, she assumed, marking territory. Revna! Her voice echoed across the clearing. Revna, where are you? Movement caught her eye near the tree line. Her daughter stood in a small meadow at the forest's edge, her dark hair tangled with leaves, her bare feet buried in the frost-covered grass. She was not alone. The Alpha of Valanthor knelt before her. Aelith froze. From this distance, she could not hear their words, only see their shapes against the morning mist. The massive, scarred wolf king brought to his knees before a 4-year-old child. Revna's hands moving as she spoke, animated and unafraid. The Alpha's stillness, absolute and complete, like a man made of stone. Then Revna reached out and touched his face, her small palm pressed against his scarred cheek, and even from 30 yards away, Aelith saw the Alpha flinch as if he had been burned. She ran. Revna! She reached them breathless, pulling her daughter back against her chest. I told you never to wander alone. I told you. I wasn't alone. Revna pointed at the Alpha, who was rising to his feet with an expression Aelith could not read. Corvain was here. Corvain. She had not known his name until this moment, had not thought to ask. The Alpha of Valanthor was simply that, a title, a legend, a last desperate hope. Now her daughter spoke his name like they were old friends. She found me. Corvain's voice was rougher than it had been last night, as if something had scraped it raw. Not the other way around. She's a child. She doesn't understand. She understands more than you realize. Those winter amber eyes fixed on Aelith with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Who was her father? The question struck like a blow. What? Her father. Your mate. The wolf Valdric killed. Corvain stepped closer, and Aelith became suddenly aware of how large he was, how his presence seemed to swallow all the air in the meadow. What bloodline did he carry? I don't. Common blood. We were both common-born. Nobody important. You're lying. I'm not. Your scent changes when you lie. Did you think I wouldn't notice? Aelith's mouth went dry. Corvain studied her face with the patience of a predator who knew his prey had nowhere to run. Your daughter sees things she should not be able to see. She knows things she could not possibly know. And Valdric Sorn, a wolf who has never once crossed into my territory, sends hunters across 3 territories to capture her. He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a growl. "Tell me again that she is nobody important." "Mama." Revna tugged at Aelith's sleeve. "It's okay. Corvain won't hurt us." "How do you know that?" "Because his wolf told me." Revna smiled up at the alpha with innocent certainty. "His wolf wants to protect us, even if Corvain doesn't know it yet." Corvain's expression flickered. That crack in the ice again, deeper this time, spreading. He turned away abruptly, his cloak swirling around him. "The healer will come for your companion within the hour. You will remain in the cottage until I send for you." "And then?" He paused, his back rigid. "And then you will tell me the truth, Aelith of Greymore. All of it, including the parts you think will get you killed." He strode toward the forest without looking back, but Aelith noticed his hands were clenched so tightly that his knuckles had turned white. And she noticed that his wolf, that wounded, dormant beast her daughter had somehow seen, was stirring in his eyes for the first time in what looked like years. The healer arrived as promised. She was a small woman with silver-streaked hair and hands that moved with the efficiency of decades. She said nothing as she examined Orla's wound, nothing as she applied salves that smelled of pine and something darker, nothing as she wrapped fresh bandages with practiced precision. Only when she finished did she speak. Another day and the rot would have set in. Her voice was dry and brittle, like autumn leaves. "You were lucky." Luck had nothing to do with it. Orla's color had already begun to improve, a faint flush returning to her cheeks. "Aelith kept me alive." The healer's eyes flicked to Aelith with new interest. "You have training?" "My mother was an herbalist. I learned what I could." The woman gathered her supplies, but her gaze lingered on Aelith a moment longer. "The Alpha has questions for you. I would advise answering them truthfully. Corvain is not cruel, but he is not forgiving either. Whatever secrets you carry, they will come out eventually." The door closed behind her. "He knows about Revna," Aelith said quietly. "He doesn't know what she is, but he knows she's different." "Then we leave. Tonight. Before." "And go where?" Aelith gestured at the window, at the vast forest beyond. "Valdric's wolves are still out there. The moment we step outside Velenthor's borders, they'll find us. And this time, they won't settle for wounding you." Orla was silent for a long moment. "There's something you should know," she said finally. "Something Jareth made me promise never to tell you. Your husband discovered more than just what Revna is. He discovered what she's destined to become, and why Valdric will never, ever stop hunting her." Before she could continue, the cottage door swung open. Corvain filled the doorway, his presence sucking the warmth from the room. His amber eyes found Aelith immediately, and the weight of his gaze pressed against her like a physical force. "Come with me, now. I'm not leaving Orla and Revna alone. My wolves will guard them." He stepped aside to reveal two massive warriors standing sentinel in the morning light. "No one enters. No one leaves. Your family will be safer than they have been in weeks." Corvain led her not to the great hall she had expected, but to a small clearing deep within the forest. They walked in silence, their boots crunching on frost-hardened leaves. The trees grew thicker here, their branches intertwining overhead to block the pale winter sun. The world became a cathedral of shadow and silver, ancient and hushed. At the clearing's center stood a stone. It was waist-high, rough-hewn, with words carved into its surface that time had worn nearly smooth. Before it, the grass had been cleared in a perfect circle, as if nothing dared grow too close. Two names had been etched into the stone. Marin, Sylvan. Aelith's breath caught. "Who?" "My mate." Corvain's voice was hollow. "And my son." The words hung in the frozen air. Aelith stared at the grave marker, understanding crashing through her like a wave. The Alpha who never took a Luna. The wolf her daughter had called sad. The ice in his eyes that was not cruelty, she realized now, but armor. He had loved once. He had lost everything. Valdric, she said quietly. Valdric's father. 15 years ago, before Valdric inherited the Crestlands, they came during a celebration. Marin was 8 months pregnant. His hands clenched at his sides. I was not fast enough. Corvain, I did not bring you here for sympathy. He turned to face her, and Aelith saw that his eyes had shifted. No longer entirely human, the amber bleeding into gold, his wolf pressing close to the surface. I brought you here so you understand what I am willing to do to the wolves of Crest, and so you understand what I need before I do it. What do you need? The truth. He stepped toward her, close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his skin despite the winter cold. What is your daughter, Aelith? What did your husband discover that was worth dying for? Aelith's heart pounded against her ribs. She thought of Jareth's body on their bedroom floor. She thought of the nights spent running, of Orla's blood on her hands, of Revna's small voice asking why the wolves were chasing them. She thought of the way Corvain had knelt before her daughter in the meadow, as if pulled by a force he could not name, and she made her choice. The first wolves, she said. Have you heard of them? Corvain's expression flickered. Legends. Children's stories. They're not stories. Aelith's voice steadied as she spoke. The first wolves were the originals, the ancestors of all wolf kind. Their bloodline was supposed to have died out centuries ago, diluted through generations until nothing remained. She paused. Jareth discovered it didn't die out. It went dormant. Hidden in common bloodlines, passed down through generations, waiting. Waiting for what? For the right vessel. Aelith met his eyes. For a child born under the blood moon to parents who both carried the dormant gene. Corvain went very still. Revna was born on the winter solstice, Aelith continued, beneath a blood moon unlike any seen in 300 years. Jareth didn't understand at first, but then she started seeing things, knowing things, and he began to research, to dig into old records and forbidden texts. Her voice broke slightly. He was so excited when he found the truth. He thought it was a blessing. What did he find? That our daughter carries the complete bloodline of the first wolves. Undiluted. Pure. Aelith's hands trembled. And that, when she comes of age, she will have the power to command any wolf who hears her voice. Any wolf. Regardless of pack. Regardless of allegiance. Corvain's face had turned to stone. Valdric found out. Aelith whispered. I don't know how. But he came for her. He wants to raise her as his own, to wait until her power awakens, and then... She couldn't finish. He would be unstoppable. Corvain's voice was barely human. An army that cannot disobey. Every pack in the realm brought to heel by a power they cannot resist. Yes. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Corvain moved. Not toward her, but toward the grave. He pressed his palm against the cold stone, against the names of the family he had lost. I swore I would never take another mate, he said quietly. I swore I would never let another soul close enough to destroy me. His shoulders rose and fell with a heavy breath. And now a child I've known for one day has looked into my heart and seen every wound I carry. I'm sorry. Don't be. He turned back to face her, and Aelith saw something new in his eyes, something burning beneath the ice. Your daughter sees what I have tried to bury. My wolf, silent for 15 years, stirred the moment she touched my face. His voice dropped to a rasp. Do you know what that means? Aelith shook her head. It means the bond recognizes something. Corvain stepped toward her, close enough to touch. Not just in the child. In you. Aelith's breath stopped. I felt it last night. His hand rose, hovering near her face without quite making contact. When I saw you at the gate, half drowned and desperate, I told myself it was nothing. When your daughter spoke my wolf's grief aloud, I told myself it was coincidence. His fingers brushed her cheek, and heat bloomed through Aelith's entire body. But when I watched you tend to your wounded, when I saw you stand before me with nothing but defiance in your eyes, my wolf said a word I never thought I would hear again. What word? Corvain's eyes blazed gold. Mine. The word ignited something in Aelith's chest, a warmth she had not felt in years, a stirring of something she had thought died with her husband, and terrified her to her core. I can't. She stepped back, breaking the contact. I'm not. My husband is barely cold. I have a daughter to protect. I don't have room for. I know. Corvain did not pursue her. And I am not asking for anything. I am telling you what is. So there are no lies between us. His jaw tightened. Valdric Sorn killed my family. He will not have yours. Whatever the cost, whatever war comes to my gates, I will stand between that wolf and your daughter. Why? You don't owe us anything. Because my wolf has chosen. His voice cracked on the word. And because for the first time in 15 years, I feel something other than grief. Before Aelith could respond, a howl split the morning air. They both spun toward the sound. It came from the east, from the border. And it was joined by another, then another, a cascade of warnings rolling across the territory like thunder. Corvain's expression hardened to iron. They're here. Aelith felt her blood chill. Valdric? His wolves. At least 30, crossing the eastern ridge. Corvain was already moving, his stride lengthening into something inhuman. Get back to the cottage. Stay with your daughter. Do not leave for any reason. Corvain? He paused at the edge of the clearing, looking back at her with eyes that burned like molten gold. I meant what I said, Aelith. Whatever comes through those trees, it will have to go through me first. Then he shifted. The transformation was violent and beautiful. Bones cracking, flesh rippling. A man dissolving into a wolf the size of a horse. His fur was the deep black of a moonless night. His eyes twin flames of amber fire. He threw back his massive head and howled. The sound shook the forest. Birds erupted from the trees. The ground trembled beneath Aelith's feet. And across Valanthor, dozens of answering howls rose to meet their alpha's call. Corvain vanished into the trees, a shadow swallowed by shadows. Aelith ran for the cottage, her heart pounding with terror and something else, something that felt dangerously like hope. Aelith reached the cottage as the first screams split the air. Not wolf howls, human screams. The guards Corvain had left at the door were shifting mid-stride, their bodies rippling into massive gray wolves that launched toward the eastern tree line. Inside! One of them snarled the word before his jaw elongated into a muzzle. Bar the door! Aelith didn't hesitate. She burst through the cottage door, slamming it behind her and throwing the heavy iron bolt into place. Orla was already on her feet, pale but alert, a fire poker clutched in her bandaged hands. Revna stood in the corner, her dark eyes wide but eerily calm. They're here, Revna said quietly. The bad wolves. I know, sweetheart. Aelith grabbed the knife from the cooking supplies, a poor weapon, but better than nothing. Stay behind me, both of you. Through the cottage's window she could see chaos unfolding. Wolves clashed in the clearing, gray against black, teeth flashing and blood spraying across the frost-covered grass. Corvain's wolves fought with disciplined ferocity, but they were outnumbered. For every dark wolf they brought down, 2 more emerged from the tree line, and leading them, his russet fur marked with scars that Aelith recognized from her nightmares, was a wolf she knew. Fenric, Valdric's captain, the wolf who had held her husband down while his alpha tore out Jareth's throat. Mama? Revna's voice was strange, distant, as if she were speaking from somewhere far away. The black wolf is coming. Aelith spun toward the window. A massive shadow was cutting through the battle like a blade through silk. Corvain. His black fur was slicked with blood, some his own. most not, and his amber eyes burned with a fury that made lesser wolves scatter from his path. He was making his way toward the cottage, toward them. But Fenric had seen it too. The russet wolf changed course, intercepting Corvain with a snarl that Aelith heard even through the cottage walls. They collided in a tangle of fur and fangs, rolling across the bloodied grass. Corvain was larger, stronger, but Fenric fought with the desperation of a wolf who knew failure meant death at his alpha's hands. And while they fought, 3 dark wolves broke from the main battle and sprinted toward the cottage. "The window," Orla breathed. "They're going to—" Glass exploded inward. Aelith threw herself over Revna as shards rained down around them. A wolf's head thrust through the shattered frame, jaws snapping inches from her face. She slashed with the knife, felt it connect with something solid, and heard a yelp of pain. The wolf withdrew, but only for a moment. "The back!" Orla screamed. Aelith whirled. A second wolf had found the cottage's rear entrance. Wood splintered as it threw its weight against the barrier. They were surrounded. "Revna, under the bed, now!" Her daughter didn't argue. She scrambled beneath the wooden frame, pressing herself against the wall. The front door shuddered. The back door cracked. Aelith positioned herself between them, the pathetic knife trembling in her grip. Orla stood beside her, fire poker raised, her face set with grim determination. "If they take us," Orla said quietly, "don't let them take her alive." Aelith's throat closed around a sob. "I won't." The front door burst open. A dark wolf lunged through, jaws wide, eyes fixed on Aelith with predatory hunger. She raised the knife, and a black blur intercepted the attack. Corvain hit the dark wolf mid-leap, his massive jaws closing around its throat with a sound like snapping branches. He shook once, twice, and the wolf went limp. He dropped the body and spun toward the rear door just as 2 more wolves crashed through. Aelith had never seen anything like what followed. Corvain didn't fight, he destroyed. Every movement was precise and devastating. A claw strike opened one wolf from shoulder to hip. His jaws crushed another's spine before it could complete its lunge. The third tried to flee and made it exactly 3 steps before Corvain brought it down. Through the shattered window, Aelith glimpsed Fenric's russet body lying broken in the clearing, his throat torn out. The wolf who had murdered her husband would never hurt anyone again. Silence fell. The alpha stood in the center of the ruined cottage, surrounded by corpses, his black fur matted with gore. His sides heaved with exertion. Blood dripped from wounds she could now see, a gash across his flank, another on his shoulder, a bite mark on his rear leg. He shifted. The transformation was slower this time, pained. When Corvain stood before her in human form, he was covered in blood and swaying on his feet. "Revna," he rasped, "is she safe?" Aelith's voice cracked. "She's safe." Corvain's eyes found hers. Something passed between them. Relief, gratitude, and something deeper that made Aelith's chest ache. Then his legs buckled. Aelith caught him before he hit the ground, staggering under his weight. He was so much larger than her, so heavy, but she refused to let him fall. "Orla, help me get him to the bed." Together, they dragged the unconscious alpha to the mattress where Orla had lain just hours before. Blood soaked through the blankets immediately. "The wounds are deep." Orla examined them with a healer's eye despite her own weakness. "He needs— I know what he needs." Aelith was already moving, gathering the supplies the healer had left behind. Her hands remembered the motions her mother had taught her. Clean the wound, pack it with herbs, bind it tight. But as she worked, as she pressed cloth to the alpha's torn flesh, she felt something strange stirring in her palms. Warmth, light. She gasped and jerked her hands back. Golden luminescence clung to her fingers, fading even as she watched. "Mama?" Revna had crawled out from under the bed. She was staring at Aelith's hands with an expression of wonder. "You're glowing." I don't. It's okay. Revna climbed onto the bed beside Corvain's unconscious form. You're supposed to. The bond wants you to help him. Aelith's heart stuttered. What bond? But Revna only smiled and placed her small hand over Corvain's heart. The one that's been waiting for both of you, she said, for a very long time. Corvain drifted in darkness. He knew this place, had visited it every night for 15 years, the void where his wolf had retreated after Marin's death, the empty cavern where Joy went to die. But something was different now. Light flickered at the edges of his vision. Warmth pressed against his chest, against his face, against the wounds that should have been screaming with pain. And a voice, soft, unfamiliar, achingly tender, spoke words he couldn't quite hear. He followed the light. Aelith had not slept. She sat beside Corvain's bed through the long hours of the night, changing his bandages, checking his wounds, watching his face for any sign of consciousness. The golden light had not returned to her hands, no matter how desperately she willed it. But his wounds were healing anyway, faster than they should, faster than any wolf she had ever seen. He's strong. Orla had taken Revna to the far corner of the cottage, wrapping the child in blankets and stroking her hair until she finally slept. Stronger than most alphas. Strong enough to survive this? That depends on what he has to live for. The words settled over Aelith like a shroud. She studied his face in the firelight, the sharp angles, the scar that traced his cheekbone, the lines of grief etched around his eyes even in unconsciousness. This was a man who had buried his heart with his mate, who had walled himself off from the world rather than risk losing again. And yet, he had thrown himself between her daughter and death, without hesitation. Why? She whispered. Why fight for us? His eyes opened. Those amber eyes were clear now, focused, fixed on her face with an intensity that made her skin burn. Because my wolf would not allow otherwise. His voice was rough, scraped raw. Because the moment you stood at my gate, something in me recognized something in you. You don't know me? I know enough. He tried to sit up, winced, fell back against the pillows. I know you crossed 3 territories with a wounded companion and a child. I know you stood in my cottage with a kitchen knife, ready to die before you let them touch your daughter. I know you stayed beside my bed all night when you could have run. I couldn't run. Your wolves. My wolves would not have stopped you. Corvain's hand found hers, his fingers rough and warm. You stayed because you chose to. Because something in you recognized something in me. Aelith wanted to pull away. Wanted to rebuild the walls that had crumbled the moment she met his eyes. Instead, she heard herself speak. My husband was a good man. The words came slowly, painfully. I cared for him. I bore his child. But I never burned for him. Tears slipped down her cheeks. I never felt what I feel when you look at me. And he's been dead for less than a month. And I should be grieving. Should be what? Corvain's grip tightened. Denying what your soul knows? Pretending the bond doesn't exist because it arrived at an inconvenient time? It's not just inconvenient. It's impossible. I'm hunted. My daughter is a target. Anyone who shelters us will face Valdric's wrath. I know. Corvain pushed himself upright despite her protests, his face inches from hers. I have faced worse. I have survived worse. And I have spent 15 years in a prison of my own making, telling myself that safety lay in solitude. His free hand rose to cup her face. I was wrong. Corvain. I felt you, Aelith. When I was lost in the darkness, I felt you calling me back. Your voice. Your hands. Your light. His thumb traced her cheekbone, catching a tear. My wolf has chosen. He chose the moment your daughter touched my face and saw the grief I've carried alone for 15 years. And He stopped, his jaw working. You what? I choose too. The words were barely audible. If you'll have me, if you'll let a broken wolf try to be whole again. Aelith thought of Jareth. Kind, steady Jareth, who had given her Revna and asked for nothing but contentment in return. She thought of the life she had expected to live, the quiet existence that had been torn apart by claws and blood, and she thought of this man, this wounded alpha, who had knelt before her daughter and wept for a family he had lost, and fought like a demon for a family he had just found. She leaned forward and pressed her lips to his. The bond ignited. It was not the gentle warmth she had felt before. This was wildfire, a conflagration that roared through her veins and set every nerve ablaze. She felt Corvain's surprise, his hunger, his desperate hope crashing against her consciousness like waves against a shore. And she felt his wolf rise to meet hers. Hers. She had not known she had one, had never shifted, never felt the beast that apparently lived within her. But now, awakened by the bond, something stirred in the depths of her soul. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, Corvain's eyes were blazing gold. "You feel it," he breathed. "The bond, it's complete." Aelith pressed her hand to her chest, feeling the impossible new presence that pulsed beside her own heartbeat. Or nearly. "I can feel you. Inside me. And I, you." Corvain's hand covered hers. "We are bound now, Aelith. Whatever comes, we face it together." A small voice interrupted them. "I told you." Revna stood beside the bed, her dark eyes gleaming with satisfaction. The bond was waiting. Now the bad wolf can't win. A howl rose from the eastern border, not a warning this time. A summons. The messenger arrived at dawn. He was young, barely more than a pup, and he trembled as he knelt before Corvain in the great hall of Valanthor. The Alpha had insisted on receiving the message properly, despite his wounds. "Speak," Corvain commanded. Aelith stood at his right hand, a position that had not gone unnoticed by the gathered wolves. "Alpha Valdric Sorn sends his regards. He demands the return of the widow from Greymoor and the child she harbors." The messenger swallowed hard. "He offers peace in exchange for their surrender, one day to comply. After that, war. His full force against Valanthor. 3,000 wolves, Alpha. We counted them at the border." Silence gripped the hall. 3,000, murmured Hadron, the eldest advisor. "We have perhaps 800 who can fight. Even with your strength, Alpha. You counsel surrender." Hadron lowered his eyes. "I counsel survival. The woman and child are not of our pack. Their quarrel became ours the moment Valdric's wolves crossed into my territory and attacked my people." Corvain's voice was ice. "Their quarrel became mine the moment I gave them shelter. With respect, Alpha, the woman is my mate." The words detonated in the hall like thunder. "The bond formed last night. She is Luna of Valanthor in all but ceremony, and her daughter is under my protection as surely as if she were my own blood. Alpha, 3,000 wolves. I will not surrender them. Send word to Valdric Sorn. Tell him his demands are refused. Tell him if he wants war, he will have it." Corvain's eyes blazed. "And tell him I remember what his father did to my family. Tell him I have waited 15 years for a Sorn to be foolish enough to give me an excuse." The messenger fled. That night, as Corvain slept beside her with one arm wrapped protectively around her waist, Aelith lay awake and listened to the distant howls of the gathering army. 3,000 wolves, 800 to defend. And at the center of it all, one small girl with power she didn't understand, and enemies who would never stop hunting her. Aelith made her decision. She slipped from the bed without waking Corvain. The bond made it difficult, his wolf stirring at her absence, but exhaustion kept him under. She dressed in silence, gathered Revna from the small cot. "Mama?" Revna's voice was drowsy. "Where are we going?" "Somewhere safe, sweetheart." "But we're safe here. Corvain will." Corvain will die if we stay. Aelith's voice cracked. Everyone here will die. Because of us. She crept through the silent corridors toward the eastern gate where the forest waited. Where Valdric waited, she would offer herself. Offer Revna. Perhaps if Valdric had what he wanted, he would spare Valanthor. Perhaps Corvan would survive. The eastern gate loomed before her, unguarded in the pre-dawn darkness. Aelith stepped through. And behind her, in the Alpha's chambers, Corvain woke with a roar of anguish as the bond screamed with sudden terrible distance. The forest swallowed Aelith whole. She ran blindly, Revna clutched to her chest, branches tearing at her dress and skin. The bond pulsed in her chest like a second heartbeat. Corvain's anguish, his fury, his desperate need crashing against her consciousness. Come back. Come back. Come back. She felt his wolf howling through the connection, felt him tearing through the halls of Valanthor, felt the moment he caught her scent at the eastern gate. He was coming, but she had to reach Valdric first. Mama. Revna's voice was calm despite everything. This isn't the way. It's the only way, sweetheart. If I give him what he wants, he doesn't want us. He wants what I can do. Revna's small hands pressed against Aelith's cheeks. And if he gets it, everyone dies anyway. Corvain, Orla, everyone. Aelith's steps faltered. How do you know that? Because I can see it. The threads, the futures. There's only one path where we survive, Mama. And you're running the wrong direction. Before Aelith could respond, the forest erupted with wolves. They came from everywhere, shadows peeling away from trees, darkness given form and fang. Dozens of them, circling, closing in. And at their center, shifting from wolf to man with lazy grace, stood Valdric Sorn. He was beautiful in the way that poison was beautiful. Golden hair, perfect features, eyes the pale blue of a winter sky. He smiled at Aelith like she was an old friend. The wayward widow. I must thank you for saving me the trouble of breaching Valanthor's walls. Aelith's arms tightened around Revna. I came to bargain. Bargain? With what? You have nothing I cannot simply take. Take us and leave Valanthor in peace. Peace. Valdric tasted the word like something rotten. There will be no peace while a single wolf remembers that Corvain humiliated my father. I will take your daughter. I will raise Valanthor to ash, and I will make your mate watch as I claim everything he loves before I finally let him die. The bond screamed. Aelith felt Corvain's presence like a thunderstorm on the horizon, close now, but not close enough. Valdric's hand closed around her throat. The child, he commanded. Give her to me, or I crush your windpipe. Aelith couldn't breathe, could only feel Revna's small body pressed against hers and the golden light beginning to build in her chest. Mama. Revna's voice was serene. Let go. I can't. Trust me, like Corvain trusted you. Let go. Aelith released her daughter. Revna dropped to the forest floor, landing lightly on bare feet. She looked up at Valdric with eyes that had begun to glow silver. You killed my father. You chased my mother across 3 territories. You hurt my grandmother. And now you threaten the wolf who is supposed to be my new papa. Valdric's grip on Aelith's throat loosened. Fear flickered across his perfect face. What are you doing, child? What I was born to do? Revna raised her hands. Silver light exploded from her palms. It washed across the clearing like a wave, touching every wolf in its path. Valdric's soldiers froze mid-step, their eyes glazed, their bodies locked rigid, and then, one by one, they knelt. Not to Valdric, to the child. No. Valdric released Aelith. The bloodline died out. It evolved, hid, waited. Revna's voice carried harmonics that resonated in Aelith's bones. For someone who would use it to protect, not to conquer. I would have made you a queen. I'm 4 years old. I don't want to be a queen. I want my mama to be happy. I want Corvain to stop being sad. I want to go home. Valdric snarled and lunged for her. A black blur exploded from the tree line, intercepting Valdric mid-leap. Corvain's wolf form was terrible in its fury, larger than before, as if the bond had amplified his power. They crashed to the ground in a tangle of fangs and claws, but Valdric was fresh, unwounded, and Corvain had barely healed from the battle the day before. Aelith watched in horror as Valdric's jaws found Corvain's shoulder, tearing flesh, spraying blood. Corvain threw him off, but his movements were slower now, labored. He was losing. No. The word ignited something in Aelith's core. She had spent her whole life being protected. She had run and hidden and surrendered because she believed she had nothing to fight with. But she did. She had the bond. She had the light that had bloomed in her hands when Corvain lay dying. She had a wolf that had slept inside her for 30 years, waiting for a reason to wake. Aelith closed her eyes and reached for the fire. It came. The transformation ripped through her like lightning. Bones reshaping, muscles rebuilding, something ancient unfurling in her chest. She screamed, but the sound that emerged was a howl. When she opened her eyes, the world was different, sharper, brighter, alive with scents and sounds she had never known existed. She was wolf. Her fur was the color of moonlight, her eyes blazing gold. She was smaller than Corvain, smaller than Valdric, but she moved with a speed that surprised even her. Valdric had pinned Corvain to the ground, jaws closing for the killing blow. Aelith hit him like a meteor. Her teeth found the soft flesh behind his ear, a vulnerability, an instinct she didn't know she possessed. She bit down and tore. Valdric screamed and released Corvain, spinning to face this new threat. Blood poured from the wound she had inflicted. "Impossible," he snarled. "You're not even a true wolf." Corvain's jaws closed around his throat from behind. The alpha of Velenthor did not hesitate, did not savor. He simply ended it. The body hit the ground. Silence fell over the clearing. Valdric's wolves remained kneeling, held by Revna's power. The child stood among them like a small empress, silver light still radiating from her skin. Corvain shifted back to human form, swaying on his feet. His eyes found Aelith, still in wolf form, still processing the impossible thing she had become. "Aelith, shift back, please. I need to see you." She didn't know how, but the bond guided her, and slowly her body reformed into something human. She collapsed. Corvain caught her. "Don't ever do that again. Don't ever leave me. I'm sorry." She was crying. "I thought I could save you. Save everyone." "You did save me." He was weeping too. "You and Revna, you saved all of us." Revna approached, the silver light fading, leaving her looking like nothing more than an exhausted 4-year-old. "Can we go home now? I'm really tired." Corvain laughed, a broken, beautiful sound, and pulled the child into their embrace. "Yes, let's go home." 6 months later, spring had come to Velenthor. The forest that had seemed so ominous on that storm-ravaged night now burst with green life. Wildflowers carpeted the meadows. Wolves patrolled the borders with easy contentment. Aelith stood at the window of the Alpha's chambers, her chambers now, and watched the morning light paint the world in gold. "You're brooding." She turned to find Corvain watching her from the bed. "I'm thinking." "You think very loudly through the bond. It feels like brooding." She laughed and sat beside him. His hand found hers immediately. "I was thinking about how different everything is. 6 months ago, I was running for my life. Now I'm Luna of Velenthor, maid of the Alpha, mother of the most powerful child in 3 territories." He kissed her knuckles. "Quite a change. Revna hates being called that. She'll never be normal, but she can be happy. As can we." Through the bond, she felt his contentment, deep and genuine. The grief for Marin and Sylvan would never fully disappear, but it had transformed from a wound into a scar. The ceremony took place at sunset. The entire pack gathered in the great meadow. Torches blazed against the darkening sky. At the center, on a dais of stone, Corvain waited. He wore black and silver, the colors of Valanthor, and he had never looked more like a king. But when his eyes found Aelith walking toward him, his expression softened. Revna walked beside her mother, scattering flower petals. "I'm the one who found him first," she had argued. "I should help give him away." The elder who presided, ancient Hadron, who had counseled surrender and now wept openly with joy, spoke the traditional words, the blessings of the moon, the binding of souls. "Do you accept this wolf as your mate, in moonlight and shadow, until your spirits return to the stars?" "I do." "And do you accept this woman as your Luna, as your partner, your equal, your heart's home?" "I do. I have from the moment she stood at my gate and demanded to see me." Laughter rippled through the crowd. "Then I declare this bond witnessed and sealed. All hail the Alpha and Luna of Valanthor." Howls rose to the darkening sky. Corvain pulled Aelith into a kiss that sent fire racing through the bond. When they broke apart, Revna was tugging at both their hands. "Does this mean I can call him Papa now? For real?" Corvain knelt before the child who had seen his grief and healed it. "You can call me whatever you want," he said roughly. "For as long as you want. I'm not going anywhere." Revna threw her arms around his neck. Orla appeared at Aelith's side, pressing a handkerchief into her hand. "He's a good man," the older woman said quietly. "Jareth would have approved." "You think so?" "I know so. He wanted you to be happy, Aelith. Above all else, he wanted you to burn." Aelith laughed through her tears. She was burning now. With love. With hope. With the fierce, impossible joy of a second chance. Corvain rose with Revna in his arms and extended his free hand. "Come, Luna, our pack is waiting." She took his hand. Together, with their daughter between them, they turned to face their people. And as the moon rose over Valanthor, painting the world in silver light, Aelith finally understood what Revna had seen in Corvain from the very beginning. Not a sad wolf, not a broken alpha, just a man who had been waiting, through grief and solitude and 15 years of silence, for his family to find him. They had found each other, and they would never be parted again. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed this story.